Big with Steve Bartilla. Brought to you by
Let's talk hunting enclosed box blinds today. That box blind back there is not typically where most people set box blinds. Most people set them out in the open. As a matter of fact, enclosed elevated box blinds, frankly, I'm pretty sure they were developed specifically for getting a stand out in the middle of that field and getting you up off the ground. That works really well when you're talking low pressure areas. Low pressure without everyone else doing the same thing. Deer are very much like your dog at home in that you can train them to accept darn near anything and you can train them to fear anything. They don't know to be afraid of an elevated enclosed box blind out in the middle of a field until they start getting shot when they're around them. And they see hunters going up in them. They smell hunters in them. They see hunters coming back down out. That is how we train deer to be afraid of elevated box blinds. Okay, when you're in a situation like that, when your neighbors are hunting elevated box blinds out in the open, you know what? Odds are pretty darn good that they've trained those deer to avoid those box blinds. In those cases, just tuck them just a little bit into the cover. And even when you don't have to, there's advantages to tucking them in the cover a little bit. No, you cannot, oftentimes you cannot cover as much of the area. But how are you going to get into that stand? How are you going to get out of it? You really need to think about those things. When it's out in the middle of that field, how are you going to hunt it in the morning? The deer are feeding out there in the mornings. Okay, and how are you going to get out of there in the afternoon? About the only way is to have somebody drive out and pick you up. And that is far less of an impact than having those deer watching you climb down out that box blind, but that is still impact. You go ahead and do that 4 or 5 times, 5 minutes after dark, and guess what? Doesn't take the deer that long to figure out, you know what, I might want to come out 10 minutes after dark and then I don't have to do that death run back to the woods. Okay. In a situation like this, where that box blind is placed, in the morning, I can come up a ditch from behind, pop up into it, and those deer out in that field have no idea. In the afternoon, I come across the field to get in. After the hunt is done, slip down that ditch, button hook out of there, because all the bedding is over here. All right, when hunting that box blind, remember, camo, that's for stalking. And it's for tree stand hunting. Black is for box blinds. Okay, you go ahead and you black out the back windows, and this is the exact same on ground blinds for that matter as well. You black out the back windows so you're not silhouetted when you're moving around in there. Okay, then you wear black. If nothing else, wear a black hood, but it's great when you can actually wear a ninja hood and gloves because, this is what I'm doing with my bow. When these are black and you're inside an enclosed blind and the backside is blacked out, oh man, I'll tell you what, you can get away with a whole bunch of movement, and that is, as a side note, a glorious setup for taking kids and first-time hunters out. Put them in black, put them in a deal like that where they got a black background and you virtually vanish into the shadows. Think about how you're going to get in, think about how you're going to get out, and think about how you're going to stay hidden. You do those things, and enclosed box blinds really can pay off extremely well for you. Final thoughts, brought to you by Huntworth. Everybody thinks that enclosed elevated box blinds need to go out in the middle of the field. Well, not everybody, exaggeration for emphasis, but a lot of people. Okay, very few think about tucking them back into cover. Okay. 9 times out of 10 when I'm tucking them back into cover like that, it's because there's a tree that just doesn't work. There's no tree there that I can make work with either a hang-on, a primal ladder stand, and I don't want a ground blind there. Okay, now I'm looking at an elevated redneck on a 10-foot stand. When that's the case, 9 times out of 10, it's just because there's not a good tree there and that's a great spot. That 10th time is because deer are all around that location. And there's no other way to hunt it at all marginally safely wind-wise. You go ahead and you keep those backside windows closed. You take odor control seriously. You wear all black on your upper half, and you know what? You disappear in the shadows, and oftentimes you're able to defeat their sense of smell as well.